The dog shouldn't have been alive. Ethan Crowley knew that the moment he spotted the German shepherd lying on the narrow county road, her chest rising in shallow, desperate shivers. Dawn was barely breaking over the pine ridges, a gray, uneasy light stretching across the asphalt like something half awake and watching. The road here was always quiet, too quiet, and the nearest farmhouse sat miles back through the trees. He knelt beside her, whispering soft reassurance, but his voice faltered when he saw it. A strip of frayed twine wrapped tightly around her paw, and something small, something bloody, tied to it. A reminder, if you like stories that grip you from the very first second, you're welcome to stay with me for more. The dog's breath fluttered like a torn leaf in the wind. Ethan Crowley crouched in the dim morning haze, knees pressed against the cold asphalt, his pulse climbing as he studied the injured German shepherd sprawled across the narrow stretch of County Road 18. The world was unusually still. No birds, no distant tractors, no creaking windmills from the farms that dotted the hills. Just silence, thick and wrong. The shepherd weakly lifted her head when he touched her side, but her eyes were clouded with pain. She dragged herself here. He could tell by the disturbed gravel on the shoulder, the faint streaks of dirt, maybe blood, leading back toward the tree line. But all that faded when he saw the thing tied to her paw. A strip of weathered twine, looped so tightly around the dog's swollen leg it looked like it had been there for hours. At the end of it was a small object wrapped in damp cloth. A reddish stain seeped through the fabric. His throat tightened. "Easy, girl," he murmured. "I'm not going to hurt you." He reached for the object, but the dog let out a weak, trembling whine, half warning, half plea. Ethan pulled back. "It's okay," he whispered, voice cracking. "Just hang on." He slid his arms under her gently. She was lighter than he expected. Too light, ribs sharp beneath his fingers. Malnourished, neglected, and recently injured. His truck idled a few yards behind them, old blue paint fading into fog like a tired ghost. He carried her to the passenger seat, setting her down carefully before jogging around to the driver's side. Only when he settled behind the wheel did he realize his hands were shaking. He glanced at the cloth-wrapped object again. It rested between the dog's paws as if she were guarding it. Whatever it was, it mattered, and someone had meant for it to be found. The drive back into town took 12 minutes, but his nerves stretched every second into something longer. The shepherd whimpered softly with each bump in the road. Ethan kept one hand on the wheel, the other hovering over her shoulder. "Stay with me, girl," he whispered. The sun had climbed farther above the pine ridges by the time the small town of Hollow Creek appeared through the thinning fog. A place you could miss in the blink of an eye. 2 diners, an old hardware store, a gas station that sold more worms than gasoline, and a sheriff's office with a roof that had sagged for the past decade. He pulled up outside Hollow Creek Veterinary. The lights were off, but he knew Dr. Marla Jennings would be inside anyway. She lived above the clinic in a cramped loft that always smelled faintly of antiseptic and lavender. Ethan killed the engine and lifted the dog from the truck. She whimpered, but didn't struggle. The door jingled softly as he pushed it open. "Marla," he called. A moment later, footsteps thudded down the stairs. Dr. Marla Jennings emerged wearing wrinkled scrubs, red hair in a messy bun, and the bleary look of someone who hadn't slept well in years. "What happened?" she asked the moment she saw the dog in his arms. "I found her collapsed on the county road. She's badly hurt." Marla hurried ahead, pushing open the exam room door. "Put her on the table." He did. Marla's hands moved quickly, checking reflexes, examining wounds, noting the tight wrap of twine. Her face hardened. "Someone did this." "I know." Marla took surgical scissors from a tray, hesitating only briefly before cutting the string. The cloth bundle dropped into her palm. "What the hell?" she whispered. She placed the bundle onto a metal tray and slowly unwrapped it. Ethan leaned in, breath tight. Inside the cloth was a small, mud-smeared piece of cardboard, roughly torn from a larger box, soaked partially with blood. Words had been scratched onto it in shaky handwriting. Ethan's stomach knotted. Marla covered her mouth. "Ethan, that's your name." Written unevenly in fading marker. "Ethan Crowley, Help U.S." A thin streak of blood crossed the corner of the cardboard like a smeared fingerprint. He swallowed. Hard. This is impossible. Marla looked up. Someone used his dog to send you a message. Someone who's hurt. Someone who thought you'd be the one to find her. Ethan backed up a step, heart pounding. Why me? You tell me. He didn't answer, because he knew exactly who would write something like that, and none of the possibilities made sense. He forced himself to breathe. Can she be saved? He asked, voice tight. Marla nodded slowly. I think so. She has a broken rib, dehydration, and old scars on her hind legs. She frowned, and she'd been starved for weeks. Ethan clenched his jaw. Do what you can. Marla nodded and turned back to the shepherd. Before Ethan could turn to leave, she said, Ethan? He paused. Be careful, she said quietly. Someone out there knows your name. Outside, the air had warmed, but Ethan felt cold. He stood beside his truck for several long minutes, rubbing his hands together, watching fragments of fog drift across the street. Hollow Creek looked normal, quiet, lazy, half asleep. People rarely hurried here. They barely noticed each other, which meant someone could hide in plain sight. Someone who needed him, or someone who wanted him involved. He pulled out the cardboard piece again, saw the shaky letters, the smear of blood, his name, help us, not me, which meant more than one person was in danger. Ethan's brows drew tight. His past wasn't clean. He'd tried to bury some parts of it, but trouble always seemed to claw its way back. He slid into his truck and started the engine. He wasn't sure where he was going until the road curved instinctively toward the outskirts of town, the old mill district near the river, the place where the younger version of himself had made more mistakes than good decisions, where he lost people, where secrets still lingered. He drove into the paved road, turned to gravel, then to dirt. The skeletal remains of the old sawmill appeared through the thinning trees, broken boards, rusted machinery, and collapsed beams leaning like tired drunks. Ethan stepped out, scanning the area. Nothing looked disturbed, just ghosts of the past whispering through rotted timber. Still, he walked the perimeter, boots crunching on dead leaves. The message on that cardboard pulsed in his pocket with every step. Whoever sent the dog must have known he'd come here first. He reached the mill's side door, half hanging from rusted hinges. The moment he pushed it open, the smell hit him, damp wood, mildew, and something faintly metallic. Blood. Fresh? No. Old, but not as old as the building. Ethan's pulse tightened. Inside, sunlight cut through broken roof tiles, casting thin beams across the splintered floor. Dust motes drifted lazily. He moved deeper. Near the far corner, he spotted footprints in the dust, small ones, maybe a teenager's, and another set, larger, heavier, overlapping them. The smaller footprints moved in circles, as if the person had been pacing. The larger set stopped right behind them. Ethan's jaw tensed. A sick feeling knotted his stomach. He crouched, tracing the pattern with his fingers. What the hell happened here? Something glinted nearby. He reached for it. A small silver chain, broken at one end, rested on the ground. A tiny charm shaped like a crescent moon dangling from it. Recognition hit him like a blade. Lily. He closed his fist around the necklace. Lily Hart, 17, smart, quiet, carried that crescent charm everywhere. He'd known her since she was a child. Her mother, Caroline, had been one of his closest friends before she died 3 years ago. He'd promised Caroline he'd look after Lily when she was gone, and now her necklace was lying on the floor of an abandoned mill. His breath shook. He stood, scanning the shadows as if they might give him answers. But the mill was quiet, empty, except for one thing. Something was pinned to the jagged support pillar near the back, something small and white. Ethan approached slowly. It was a piece of torn notebook paper, held in place by an old nail. The handwriting was hurried, frantic. He ripped it down and read, "You weren't supposed to find her first, but now you're part of this. Keep looking." The bottom of the note was smeared with a filthy fingerprint. The dog. She'd carried one message. This was the next. He exhaled slowly, rage stirring in his chest. Someone was playing with him. Someone who knew his past, his weaknesses, the promises he'd made. Someone who knew he wouldn't walk away. He folded the paper and slid it into his jacket. As he turned to leave, something moved behind him, sharp enough to raise the hairs on the back of his neck. The faintest shift of weight. A board creaking. He spun around. Who's there? Silence. Only dust drifting in thin sunlight. He stepped carefully, eyes narrowing, his senses sharpened, old instincts waking up. He scanned the broken rafters, the collapsed roof, the corners of the mill swallowed in shadow. A whisper breath. He froze. Then behind him, something snapped. Ethan dropped low, just as a plank would slammed into the spot where his head had been a second earlier. It hit the floor with a hollow, violent crack. He spun, rising. A figure bolted through a gap in the wall, too fast to catch more than a silhouette. Tall, lean, wearing a dark jacket. "Hey!" Ethan shouted, sprinting after him. He burst outside, boots pounding the ground, but the trees swallowed the figure almost instantly. Ethan ran until his lungs burned, but the forest was empty, only the echo of rustling branches. He stopped, hands on his knees, sucking in cold air. Whoever that was, they had been watching him, waiting for him, testing him. He straightened slowly. This wasn't random. This wasn't a cry for help gone wrong. This was a setup, a cruel, deliberate hunt. And he had just been pulled into the center of it. When Ethan returned to town, Marla stepped outside the clinic the moment she saw his truck. She looked exhausted and worried. "She's stable," she said before he could ask. "I got fluids into her. Pain meds. She'll need rest, but she's stronger than she looks." Ethan nodded, tried to collect his breath. "Good." Marla studied him. "You look pale." He hesitated. "I found something at the old mill." Something or someone? Footprints. A necklace. He held up the crescent charm. "Lilies." Marla's face went slack. "Oh my God. You don't think." "I don't know," he cut in, "but someone was there. Someone watching me." Marla stepped closer, voice low. "Ethan, whoever sent this dog, whoever wrote your name, they knew exactly how to get your attention." He didn't deny it. She took a breath. "Then you need backup. Call Sheriff Harlan." Ethan's expression hardened. "No." Marla blinked. "Why not?" "Because Harlan is the last person I trust with something like this." Marla's eyes narrowed slightly. "You think he's involved?" "I think he knows more than he ever says." She crossed her arms. "You always think the worst of people." Ethan met her gaze, voice steady. "People have earned it." Marla didn't argue. After a long silence, she said quietly, "Whoever you're up against, they're not just trying to scare you. They're leading you somewhere." "I know. And you're going to follow." He looked at the injured shepherd through the clinic window. "Yes," he said, "I am." Marla exhaled, "Then promise me something." "What?" "Don't get yourself killed." Ethan almost smiled, almost. "I'll try." She touched his arm briefly before stepping back. "If the dog wakes, I'll call you." He nodded and turned to leave. But before he reached his truck, Marla called out, "Ethan?" "Yeah." "You said you found Lily's necklace." She hesitated. "There's something you should know. Lily didn't lose that necklace. She never took it off." His stomach sank. "I know. And she hasn't been seen for 3 days." Ethan froze. "What?" "I thought maybe she'd gone to stay with friends," Marla said. "But now—" Ethan's pulse hammered in his ears. 3 days. Missing. And someone tied a message to a dying dog just to bring him into it. He climbed into the truck. He didn't look back. On the way home, he unfolded the cardboard message again. "Help us. Not Lily alone. Us." Which meant she wasn't the only one missing. The thought made his chest tighten in a way he hadn't felt since the night his brother disappeared years ago. The night that carved a permanent scar across his life. He pulled into his driveway, gravel crunching under the tires. His cabin sat on a slope facing the woods, secluded, quiet, easy to watch without being seen. As he unlocked the front door, he sensed something off, just a flicker of wrongness. He stepped inside slowly. The air felt different, still warm from a heater, but disturbed, like someone had walked through it not long ago. He scanned the room. Nothing broken, nothing stolen. But on the kitchen counter lay something that hadn't been there before. A fresh envelope. His name written on the front. His breath caught. He approached carefully, every nerve awake. He picked it up. Inside was a single sheet of paper, written in the same shaky handwriting as the cardboard. If you want to save Lily, don't involve the sheriff. We're watching. And at the bottom, you're already too late. Ethan felt ice in his veins. He crushed the paper in his fist. Someone had been inside his home. Someone close. Watching. Waiting. And the worst part, the part that made his stomach cave, they were telling the truth. He was late, but not too late to fight back. Not too late to find her. Not too late to unravel whatever game had begun on that quiet country road. He took a slow breath. "Lily," he whispered, "I'm coming." Ethan didn't sleep that night. He sat in the dim light of a single kitchen lamp, elbows on the table, staring at the crumpled note he'd found inside the envelope. A thin wind slid along the cabin walls, rattling the old cedar boards like restless fingers. Hollow Creek always felt isolated, but tonight it felt watched, like the woods themselves leaned closer, listening. If you want to save Lily, don't involve the sheriff. We're watching. You're already too late. He read the words again, slower, feeling the weight behind them. Whoever wrote this hadn't just broken into his home. They knew what buttons to press, which wounds to reopen. His brother Caleb had vanished on a storm-soaked night when Ethan was 19. People whisper about drugs and bad company, but Ethan knew better. Something darker had been involved. Something the sheriff at the time had decided wasn't worth digging into. Hollow Creek had always buried its secrets deep. Tonight felt hauntingly familiar. His phone buzzed on the table. A known number. He answered cautiously. Yeah. Only silence answered back. Not quiet, breathing. Slow, intentional. Ethan's grip tightened. Who is this? The breathing quickened. A scrape of fabric. A faint echo, like the speaker was inside a small room, maybe concrete or metal. Then a voice whispered, strained, young. Ethan, his heart slammed against his ribs. Lily? A choke sob. They said you'd come. They said you'd know. Please, please. The line cut without warning. Ethan stared at the dead screen, pulse pounding so hard it hurt. That was Lily. Alive. Terrified. Close enough for her captors to hear her beg. He grabbed his jacket and bolted out the door. The sky was a heavy slate when he drove toward town, low clouds swallowing the stars. His headlights cut through passing flurries of dust and pollen. Every instinct screamed that going alone was reckless, but involving Sheriff Harlan would be even worse. Harlan Ward had been sheriff of Hollow Creek for 17 years. Too many unsolved cases lingered around him like a bad smell. Too many convenient disappearances. Too many times he'd told grieving families, some things just don't have answers. Ethan didn't believe in coincidences. He took the back roads, weaving through empty fields until he reached the edge of the old rail yard, abandoned a decade ago after 2 men were killed in a derailment Hollow Creek never talked about. Flashlight in hand, he stepped out and closed the truck door quietly. Tall grass brushed against his boots. Rusted tracks stretched into darkness. The buildings around the yard, old storage sheds and forgotten offices, sat like hunched silhouettes. The rail yard was the kind of place no one went after dark, which meant it was exactly the kind of place someone would choose. He moved slowly, senses sharpened. Every rustle of grass, every echo of wind between broken metal, felt loaded with meaning. He swept his flashlight across the ground. Scattered footprints, old beer cans, even a raccoon's tracks. But nothing fresh, until he reached the loading platform. He stopped. At the edge of the platform, half hidden behind a bent metal crate, was a small scrap of fabric, pale blue, torn, stained with dirt. His stomach dropped. It looked exactly like the sleeve of the hoodie Lily wore nearly every day. He knelt, fingers brushing it, still slightly damp, not from rain, from sweat, from fear. A sudden crunch behind him made him spin, flashlight raised. The beam caught a figure standing near one of the old rail carts. Tall, hooded, motionless. Ethan's heartbeat hammered. "Where is she?" he demanded. The figure didn't answer, didn't move, not even an inch. Ethan took a step forward. "You hear me? Where is—" The figure jerked suddenly, sharp and unnatural, then bolted into the darkness between the carts. Ethan sprinted after them, boots slamming against the platform. His flashlight beam whipped wildly across rusted metal and shattered windows. The hooded shape darted between two storage sheds, banking left with terrifying speed. "Stop!" Ethan roared. The figure didn't stop, but something fell from their hand, a glint in the beam. Ethan grabbed it as he passed. A pocket knife. His pocket knife. He froze. No way. He'd lost this knife years ago. In the woods a night Caleb disappeared. His breath stalled. The figure disappeared into a larger shed and slammed the doors shut from the inside. Ethan tore across the gravel and reached the doors just as the bolt slid home. He slammed his shoulder into the metal. "Open it." Silence. He struck it again, once, twice, 3 times, until the entire shed rattled. "Where is she?" No answer. He stepped back, panting. Then a whisper inside. One voice. Then another. Then a faint laugh. Not mocking, unhinged. He felt the sound in his bones. Then quiet. Ethan tightened his hold on the knife and forced himself to breathe. Kicking down the doors was an option. They were thick steel, reinforced from when the shed stored hazardous materials decades ago. He pulled out his phone and texted Marla. Found signs Lily was taken. Need help. Don't call Harlan. Meet me at my cabin ASAP. Come alone. He waited a few seconds. No answer. He typed again. Marla, please. It's urgent. Still nothing. Ethan's pulse spiked. She always replied instantly. Always. He looked back at the silent shed, the darkness pressing around him, then hurried to his truck. Something was happening faster than he could keep up. The cabin was dark when he got home, except for a single faint glow in the living room window. He approached cautiously, gripping the knife, expecting someone to leap from the shadows. Inside, nothing had changed. No overturned furniture, no footprints on floorboards, no forced entry this time. But the glow came from a cell phone lying on his coffee table. Marla's cell phone. His chest tightened. Marla? Only silence answered. A dread he hadn't felt in years crept up his spine. He picked up her phone. The screen was cracked. The back was smeared with dirt. A single message sat open on the screen, half-typed, unsent. Ethan, please answer. Someone is... The message ended abruptly. He whispered, No. His phone buzzed. Unknown number again. He answered immediately. Where is she? Where is Marla? A long pause. Then the same breathing from earlier, slow, deliberate, too controlled to be accidental. A man's voice this time. You're not listening. Ethan's grip tightened. Show yourself. You're moving too fast, the voice whispered. Stop chasing. Start seeing. Ethan's jaw clenched. Let Marla go. You're in no position to demand anything. The voice softened to something almost amused. You're making this fun. Ethan felt his pulse throb in his neck. What do you want? Isn't it obvious? The man asked quietly. We're rewriting a story you abandoned. Ethan's breath faltered. What story? Caleb's. Ethan went cold. Don't say his name, he growled. Why not? The voice whispered. You never did enough for him alive. You'll have plenty of chances now. Ethan felt something inside him rupture. Rage, grief, guilt. What do you want from me? Just follow the trail, the man said calmly. You'll find Lily. And Marla, if you're quick enough. The line clicked off. Ethan stood in the silence, trembling. Someone was using Caleb's disappearance, twisting it, weaponizing the wound that had never healed. Someone who knew the details, the rumors, the pain. Someone who wanted him to relive it. But who? And why now? He sank onto the couch, hands pressed into his eyes. Then he heard it, a soft shuffle on his porch. Ethan froze. He stood slowly, knife ready, and moved toward the door. He swung it open. No one, just the night. He stepped out, scanning the darkness. Something moved near the tree line, a thin silhouette slipping behind a pine trunk. Ethan lifted the knife. "Come out." A small sound answered him. Not a threat. A whine. Ethan's breath caught. The German shepherd. She limped toward him from the shadows, bandages still fresh, eyes heavy but determined. "What the hell?" he whispered. "You shouldn't even be walking." She stopped at his feet and lowered her head, pushing something toward him with her nose. A scrap of paper. His throat tightened as he unfolded it. "You miss one clue at the mill. Midnight. Bring her, or they die." The shepherd nudged his leg gently, as if urging him to hurry. Ethan knelt before her, meeting her tired eyes. "Someone used you," he whispered. "Someone hurt you to get to me." The dog blinked slowly, like she understood. Ethan rested his hand on her head. Then he stood. Midnight was less than an hour away. Whatever waited at the mill, whatever monster had taken Lily and Marla, whatever ghost from his past was stepping out of the dark, he was going to face it, even if it meant walking straight into a trap, even if it meant tearing open old wounds he'd spent half his life trying to bury. He grabbed his flashlight, the knife, and his coat. "Come on, girl," he whispered. The shepherd limped beside him with surprising resolve. Together, they stepped into the darkness, toward the mill, toward the truth, toward the thing that had been hunting him long before tonight. The old mill loomed like a specter against the moonlight. Its jagged roofline carved shadows across the frost-silver ground. Every broken window and splintered beam seemed to whisper Ethan's name. He moved cautiously, flashlight in one hand, knife in the other, the German shepherd limping closely beside him, ears twitching at every sound. The wind carried the faint metallic tang of old machinery. And something else. Blood. Fresh. Ethan's breath tightened in his chest. "Stay close, girl," he whispered. She pressed against his leg, eyes glowing faintly in the beam. He circled the perimeter first, noting the tracks from the earlier encounter. Footprints disappeared behind a pile of collapsed boards near the far wall. There was no cover to hide, no chance for him to guess which shadows held the enemy. Or Lily. The door to the main floor of the mill was ajar, groaning softly as it swayed with the night wind. Ethan approached, each step careful, deliberate. The air was heavy, scented with oil, mildew, and fear. He hesitated at the threshold, listening. A faint whimper reached him from inside. "Lily," he called, voice low but steady. Nothing at first. Then a sharp clatter from the far corner, followed by muffled voices. Not one, but two. One male, one female. And both terrified. Ethan pressed forward, crouching behind a rusted support beam, flashlight sweeping across broken machinery. He caught movement. Two figures shackled to chairs, heads hanging low. Lily and Marla. Both had bruises, dirt-streaked clothes, eyes wide with fear. His stomach twisted. Whoever had taken him knew exactly how to strike fear. Whoever had orchestrated this had studied him, his past, his weaknesses. From the shadows, a voice called, "Ethan Crowley." Smooth, calm, like a predator savoring a hunt. He froze. The figure stepped into the moonlight. Tall, lean, and familiar. The last person he expected. Sheriff Harlan. Ethan's hand went to the knife instinctively. "You." Harlan's smile was cold. "Surprised to see me?" "You were supposed to protect this town, not terrorize it," Ethan said, voice shaking with rage. Harlan shrugged. "Protection is relative. You want Lily? Marla? Then play by my rules." He gestured toward a pile of wooden crates. "Step closer, and maybe they live. Step wrong." Well, his smile widened, revealing the years of cruelty hidden behind law enforcement. Ethan's pulse surged. The dog growled low, sensing the danger, body tensing beside him. "I know about Caleb," Harlan said, voice dropping to a whisper. "I've known all along. You thought you were burying your past. But I've been waiting for the right moment to finish it." "You killed him," Ethan said, voice barely audible. Harlan's lips twitched, almost like a laugh. "No, Ethan, I saved him from people who would have used him. But your inaction allowed the chaos to continue. You promised your brother safety. Yet here you are, decades later, still playing catch-up. Ethan's hand shook, anger flaring hotter than fear. Enough. Harlan raised a hand slowly. Now, patience, boy. Observe, understand, and act carefully. The dog found the first clue. But to reach the next, you'll have to choose. Risk your life or let them suffer. Ethan's mind raced. Any rash movement would get Lily or Marla killed. The shepherd growled, then barked once, sharp, low. A signal. Ethan followed her gaze. On a small table, a bloodied hammer and set of ropes lay ready. Harlan had staged everything with meticulous cruelty. Do it wrong, they die. Harlan continued. Do it right. Maybe you all walk away alive. Maybe. Ethan exhaled slowly, forcing control. He knew the mill like the back of his hand. Hidden crawl spaces, support beams that could hide him, loose floorboards. He crouched, whispering to the dog, You and I will handle this. Quietly. The shepherd nudged his leg, then ran toward a narrow gap between crates, barking softly, drawing Harlan's attention for just a moment. Ethan darted to the opposite side, using shadows as cover. He grabbed a length of chain lying nearby, swinging it to rattle another pile of crates. Harlan's gaze snapped to the noise. Coward, he spat, reaching for his gun. Ethan rolled low, launching himself behind a stack of rusted barrels. The dog leapt again, knocking a tin can into the light, creating a distraction. Harlan cursed, moving toward the sound. Ethan used the moment, creeping toward Lily and Marla. The chains holding their wrists were old but sturdy. He gritted his teeth, using his knife to cut through silently, careful to avoid any metal that would scream in the night. Sure, we're okay, Ethan whispered as he freed Lily. Her eyes filled with tears, relief shining through fear. Marla followed, clutching her side, bruises evident. We have to move now, Ethan urged. Quietly, they crept toward the side exit, but Harlan had anticipated escape. He emerged from the shadows with a pistol, pointing directly at Ethan. Going somewhere? The dog lunged. The shepherd's teeth sank into Harlan's sleeve, yanking the weapon down just long enough for Ethan to react. He swung the chain, striking Harlan's knee, and the sheriff fell with a grunt. The gun skidded across the floor. Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed Lily and Marla, pushing them toward the exit. The shepherd stayed close, growling, vigilant. Outside, the cold night air hit them like a slap. The moon glinted off frost-covered leaves. Ethan didn't look back. He ran, dragging the injured but resilient shepherd with him. Lily stumbled but kept pace, adrenaline carrying her. They made it to the truck. Ethan helped Lily and Marla inside, keeping his gaze on the mill. Harlan staggered out, shaking off the pain, eyes wild. But the shepherd barked once, decisively, and Harlan froze. The leash from the dog's paw, the very same he'd used to deliver the first message, snapped taut as the shepherd lunged forward. Harlan retreated. Ethan started the engine, tires crunching over frost-covered gravel, and barreled down the dark road. Silence fell over the truck, punctuated only by Lily's sobs and the dog's soft panting. Finally, he glanced at them. You're safe now. We're safe. Lily shook her head. No, they'll come back. Harlan, he's not normal. Ethan nodded grimly. I know, but right now we're alive. That's what matters. Marla placed a hand over his. Thank you, she said softly, for everything, for not giving up. Ethan exhaled, finally allowing himself a fraction of relief. The shepherd nudged his shoulder, as if affirming it. The next day, Hollow Creek awoke to a strange calm. The mill had gone quiet. Harlan had vanished, leaving only the echoes of his cruel game behind. The town would talk, of course, whispers about the sheriff, about missing girls, about the boy who returned to confront ghosts. Ethan returned home, carrying Lily's crescent charm, clean now, in his hand. He placed it on the table beside the shepherd's water bowl. The dog nosed it, then settled down beside him, exhausted but proud. He sat back, thinking about the string of events. The dog collapsed on the road, the cardboard message, the shadows of his past, the betrayals, the fear. Each link in the chain had led him here, to survival, to truth, to quiet justice. Even if imperfect, Lily leaned against his shoulder. Marla rested her head lightly on her arm. The dog lay across their feet, chest rising in soft, steady breaths. Ethan reached down, stroking the German shepherd's head. "You were the first to guide me," he said, "and I couldn't have done it without you." The three of them sat in silence, listening to the wind whisper through the trees outside. It carried the remnants of the night's terror, but also the first hint of something else. Peace. Fragile, tentative, yet real. No words could undo what had happened. No apology could erase the fear. But for the first time in a long time, Ethan felt a measure of closure. The road would never forget, the town would never forget, and he himself would carry the scars forever. But the shadows that had haunted him, the shadows that had taken so much, were finally just shadows. And as he watched the shepherd's ears twitch in sleep, Lily's fingers gripped the crescent charm, and Marla's breathing even out, Ethan understood something profound. Sometimes survival wasn't about defeating evil completely. Sometimes it was about protecting what mattered, choosing who to trust, and moving forward one quiet step at a time. He looked out the window at the small town blanketed in the soft light of morning. The darkness had passed, at least for now, and for the first time in years, he felt a tentative peace settle over him. The German shepherd had collapsed on the road for a reason, to lead him to the truth, to the people he was meant to save, and to the realization that sometimes the most vulnerable among us carry the greatest strength. Ethan Crowley had been tested. He had walked through fear, grief, and betrayal, and he had emerged, not unscathed, not unbroken, but alive, capable, and determined. The dog lifted her head slightly, eyes meeting his. No words were needed. A promise passed between them, unspoken but clear. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Outside, the world was quiet. Inside, hearts beat in cautious harmony. And somewhere in the distance, the first light of dawn broke through the trees, pale and forgiving.